What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020, Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And since 2020, we've reached out our team directly and indirectly to over 300,000 fathers around the world. So, love that. Also, I'd like to inform you, I'm a featured content provider on the Fly Nubian Queen Network YouTube channel, which has 583,000 subscribers. Thank you, Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia Watkins, for that opportunity. And if you're watching this before March 25th, 2024, I am going to be a featured content creator on a brand new network called Indie Soup Media, which is run by Dr. Tachi. And Dr. Tachi is a longtime friend of the Dr. Vibe show and Dr. Vibe. She's based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and she's going to be launching a brand new OTT on the top. I know OTT on the top. I don't know what the TT. I don't know what the TT is. I know something top. Over the top television. That's it. Over the top television network. And has over 30 content creators, me being one of them. And also with a reach of over 1 million people. So a lot of exciting things going on. But you know what? I'm broadcasting live on a Friday night. That don't happen too much. So you know that this is rare air for the friend that's coming on. And actually, I before we went live, I wondered, how long have I known Matthew Solomon? I wonder if he knows and how we first met. But you need to know Matthew Solomon. And just before we get to that, I want to do some few things. Please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, follow the Dr. Vibe Show on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, if you want to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I host or are a part of, please feel free to email me, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And finally, join the Morning Vibe. That's the wrong thing. Shouldn't be there. Discord. That's that's a whole other conversation. So kick that out of here. Now, let's get back to the main sauce. Matthew Solomon is the producer of a great film called Reimagining Safety. Now, if you haven't heard about it, I'm going to let him describe it to you because he's the driving force behind it. So no more, no less. Let's bring the star of the show up. What's up, Matthew Solomon?
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yeah, great to be back. Have you back? What's been going on?
I realized, I looked, I didn't realize it's been 13 months. 13 months. February of last year was when I was on the show last. And then, we've known each other. It had to be 2018 because I wrote,
sure?
I think so. Because I wrote the book Man's School, Relating with Women in the Me Too Era. And that came out 2018. And I think that's when we first connected. And I know we had the Good Men Project in common and I.C. Bailey, who passed away, I think introduced us originally. And that would have been the end of 2018. Yeah.
You know what? I'm actually looking, multi-purposing here. You first came on the show December 27th, 2019.
Oh, 2019. Wow.
29. Okay. That's what happens with a lot of friends that come back. I can just click up, go quickly in 2019. And you came on talking about the state of men at the end of the decade we talked about.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Mm-hmm.
So how time flies. We're having fun. Man. So for the people,
and we didn't even know what was coming up with 2020 and how, wow.
And you know what's actually interesting? A mutual friend of ours is making some big noise at South by Southwest.
Who's that?
Oh, come on.
Oh, LaRon. Yes.
Yes. And I think even I've had both. Have we?
I don't think we've been on at the same time. We've tried.
Talked about it. So you know what? Yeah. Even more so now because he's really going in on prison, school to pipeline, things like that.
Yeah.
I think both of you right now, if I can arrange it, this would be a great intersection to have both of you on because both of you are just like raising the bar for so many of us. So that'd be fantastic. So I'm gonna reach out. I know he's probably too big for me now because he's doing South by Southwest, but I'm gonna see if you gotta ask and see what happens. But
Yeah,
for
for
people
sure.
who don't know a little bit about you, can you give us a little background and then we'll get right into reimagining safety?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I was well, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I still live here, and I grew up with what I realized later was a very unique experience. I grew up in very diverse communities, went to very diverse schools. It really shaped my worldview early on, because my friends were everybody, and so I was aware of, we're talking about reimagining safety, policing, and how that's disproportionate, especially with Black and brown communities. And so, I was aware of that early on. I went to University of Southern California, USC, in the early 90s and was a music major. Later went on to the music business. But when I was at school, I got really interested in sociology and anthropology and was learning about systemic racism at the same time as the Rodney King beating and the LA riots, and then the OJ Simpson trial, and like all of that stuff. And so that was all in the background as I was a professional musician. I got into filmmaking and writing and directing and did scripted films. Was always working, studying about relationships and taking seminars, and started coaching and started working in conflict resolution. And when the Me Too movement online happened in 2018, I wrote a book to help men understand what was happening, which led to, us talking for the first time and me being on this show. And I was writing for the Good Men Project, and I was writing about relationships and communication and sexism and racism, and then doing conflict resolution work, and all of that. And so when the pandemic started and we couldn't go anywhere and I couldn't travel anywhere, I went back to school, and I ended up going into a master's in public administration program because I wanted to use my privilege and access as a white male to be able to help support social change. And I figured I was done with the entertainment business, and I was applying all of the public administration coursework around sustainability and organizational structure and transformational leadership, all of that, to the issues with policing and incarceration following the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests that were worldwide. And so when it came time to do my final thesis, one of my academic advisors was like, "We know you know how to write a paper, but we also know you're a filmmaker. Why don't you do something creative and do a documentary?" And I laughed because I'm like, "I'm a filmmaker. That's a lot of work." And she was like, "Well, do it anyway." And so I did. And that's how this film came about. I started interviewing people, finding people to interview and getting connected. I reached out to you, and you connected me to Dr. L. Jones, who blew my mind and is amazing in the film. And people love talking about all the stuff that she's talking about. And so here we are. And so the film's we've been doing community screenings for the last year with screenings and panels across in the States. We're, working to expand, but last night was our 46th community impact screening. Over 3,000 people have seen the film. Over 60 different organizations, including the Black Panther Party in Washington State, they endorsed the film and made it part of their political education curriculum, which blew my mind. And so here we are. And then we were just released on streaming services. So Amazon, Tubi, YouTube, and Google Play.
Congratulations on all of this. You mentioned a very interesting term that's become amplified, especially since 2020, white privilege.
Yeah.
When did you first realize you had it? And what was your initial response to it?
I was aware of it before it was a word. I knew that there were things I could do or say to police or otherwise and nothing would happen to me. So that had to be, well, let me put it this way. When I started driving, when my friends and I, were 16, I was always the driver. And it was very clearly because I was the least likely to get pulled over. So at least when I was 16, probably sooner than that, but that's kind of a clear point for me.
I just want to stay on the
Mm-hmm.
white privilege energy. Interesting
Yeah.
phrase, white privilege energy.
Right.
When did the white privilege energy say, you know what, I've got to take my white privilege and apply it to this project, Reimagining Safety?
Oh, well, I mean, it started before. I mean, Reimagining Safety, that wasn't even like, I never intended to do a documentary. You know, that was never a thing. Like, I thought I was done with the entertainment business, honestly, when I went into the master's program. But you know, when the LA riots were happening, you know, I was aware that where I lived up in West Hollywood was, you know, a safe zone, and you know, a lot of my friends were right in the middle of it. And it's interesting though, because I worked in a music store called Goodman Music that was, I don't know if you have viewers in LA, like it's, you know, it was like Wilshire and La Brea, which is kind of like, you know, mid city, but you know, pretty far north from where the riots had originated. And that store got you know, burnt down in the riots. And I actually, it was on the second day, and I was there, and then we were there because we were supposed to work, but a window was broken, and but then it got very clear that it was time to leave. You know, and so I went home, turned on the TV, and the store was on fire. But that was, you know, that wasn't like the civil unrest part. That was a coordinated thing. Because I remember, you know, there was some video that came out, and it showed kind of how it was organized to do that. And it was all music equipment. So, you know, people ran in and grabbed stuff, but then there were these trucks that showed up, and they hauled all the, you know, the big stuff away. But anyway, I guess that's a sidetrack. But you know, I was definitely aware when I was going to USC and when all of that was happening. You know, during the riots.
You had mentioned a few moments ago, almost like a thing that someone said you should do a documentary, saying me.
Yeah.
So when did the me become yes, I'm going to?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. A friend of mine, and I know, like, you and I know each other, so I feel very, very comfortable, which is
Thank
great.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so you know, I was talking to a friend of mine a few months ago, and kind of tracking, you know, the first film that I made, which was a horror film called Chatter, that takes place on Skype. It was before Zoom and all of that. The book that I wrote, Man School, you know, this film, they were all kind of dares. Like, somebody was like, oh, you should write a book, or oh, you should make a movie on this, or you should do a documentary, and me just going, okay, you know. And then and there's this field called human design, which is sort of like astrology, but it's a different you know, it's different, but it's similar. But it kind of tells you how you operate. And so my human design is, I'm a projector, which means when I'm invited and it aligns, like, things happen. And so on the one hand, I was invited. On the other hand, it was a dare. And on the third hand, I've always, like, even when I was doing music, it was always like, let's just record an album on a 4-track, which was a, you know, back in the day before digital, is a cassette recorder, you know, that you can multi-track. And so I've always kind of been like, you know, do it yourself. Let's make the most out of what we have, and, you know, shoot for the stars. And those things have all kind of worked out, which is pretty cool, you know, to stop and, you know, take stock of. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You know, when I think of, we've known each other a while, and you said the word dare. How big of a dare was it for you to do this?
I mean, it was a big dare. You know, I just needed that push, and then to figure out how to do it, because I hadn't done a documentary. And I have friends that are documentary filmmakers, and they've always talked about, you know, I spent 10 years on this project, and, there's always all this footage, and the financing, like I didn't have money to do it. I literally filmed it. I upgraded my iPhone from an 8 to a 13.
I remember. I think I remember there was a show that we did, a conversation that we did,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I remember you having your iPhone on a stand.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep.
And I'm going, this Matthew is in it. He
Yeah.
is in it.
Yep. Had the tripod with the phone and the laptop, so I could go. Yeah. So I upgraded my phone to a iPhone 13, so I could shoot in 4K because I knew I needed to do that. Had to upgrade my laptop so I could edit, that size of footage. Rented a second iPhone so I could have 2 camera angles, and then borrowed a lavalier mic and a Zoom digital recorder. Because like I have my background's in music and engineering and producing, and so I know the sound side, and I've made films, although this is the first time I've really shot my own, filmed my own thing. So I knew the elements, and then it was like, okay, how do I make this work and make it work by myself? And so I showed up to all the interviews with, I got a couple lights and the 2 phones and the clip-on mic and did what I did. And then the people in the film, once they saw it, they were like, this was that? Like this was your school project, and you showed up with the little phones and the little lights, and so I consider myself fortunate that I was able to take everything that I've learned along the way. None of it was really planned, except for I wanted to be a professional musician, and then that happened for a bit, but not the level I wanted. But then I've done all these other things, and it all just intersected, along with my worldview and my care for people and wanting to contribute to social change and make a difference, and raise awareness to injustices and how we can provide real safety and care for people. So all of that just kind of came together with this, and it's been like pretty incredible. Like there's only been a couple times where I've been able to like stop and think about it and be like, wow, I can't believe I got here with this, and it's awesome.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break because I want to continue down this dare journey, because I think the dare to start it, the dare to reach out to the people, the dare to be, I guess, the dare or courage to speak to some of the people you did. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. Going to be back in about 2 minutes. We're going to continue to talk about this great project that iPhones. Hey, I think you'd be a great endorsement for Apple, by the way, on this. But we'll be back in about 2 minutes. We'll take a quick break. Keep it locked on the Dr. Vibe Show, talking with Matthew Solomon. We'll be back.
And that's what I feel like. You feel like you're the Harriet Tubman of the mind.
I am.
I feel like I'm one of the Harriet Tubmans of intelligent Black people. Like, I want to liberate y'all from like being left behind and ignored and oblivion. No, really, the rappers get all the attention. Seriously, does anybody else feel this way? Like ignorant Black people, they'll be all up, getting all the headlines on the Shade Room.
Overly sexualized Black folks.
Like the twerkers and the just people that don't always represent the best of us. The diversity. Like people like Dr. Vibe. Like everybody should know about people like Dr. Vibe. Dr.
Really
Vibe he's trying to do good work for Black people. Dr. Vibe from Toronto. Good to see you, my brother. Dr. Vibe. Everybody follow Dr. Vibe. He has a great show. He's very good at what he does, and I have a lot of respect for him. The men who are also doing the same thing. I see Dr. Vibe in here. He's a great brother. Everybody should follow Dr. Vibe, by the way. He's a smart brother in Canada, and we need to follow smart people. So follow Dr. Vibe if you see him in the chat. And Dr. Vibe, say your name in the chat so people can see you. I want you to click on his name, and I want you to go follow him, please, because I want these men and women that are doing the right things to get the support they deserve. Hey, Dr. Vibe, how you doing, brother? Again, like I always do, I got to say everybody should go follow Dr. Vibe. He's got a great show. Dr. Vibe, I know Dr. Vibe's got a kingdom because I see your channel. I see you pouring into that every day. Everybody should follow Dr. Vibe, by the way. Look him up, Dr. Vibe, V-I-B-E. He's a great friend of me and my wife, and I love this guy. Okay, so let me hop into this. What's up, Dr. Vibe? How you doing? Everybody, if you see Dr. Vibe in the chat, everybody go follow the Dr. Vibe show. Dr. Bob is a real smart brother and a good human being. I like the guy a lot, and he's very intelligent. And I think everyone should pay attention to what he's got going on. We got to shine the spotlight on the intelligent Black people out here that are really doing the good work. Don't just pay attention to the rappers and the celebrities. You know, a lot of these people are losers. Your true winners are your people in your community that are really having your back. You know, helping us to have stronger families and a stronger community. So Dr. Bob is in that category. So you might see the Dr. Bob show in this chat. If you see him, please go follow him. Okay. All right. So anyway.
Okay. Why do you got this wrong thing up? There we go. We're speaking with Matthew Solomon, producer of Reimagining Safety on the Dr. Vibe. So I don't know if I've asked you this question before. So I better, how'd you come up with the name?
Reimagining Safety?
Yes.
Oh my God. that's a story too, because that nearly drove me mad. So this was a school project for my master's program. The paper that I started writing was called Reimagining Public Safety, and that was the academic paper, research paper, capstone that I was doing for this. And then, I was like, I need a better name, especially for the documentary, because, reimagining public safety sounds so dry and academic, and who's going to watch that? And so the working title, I was first calling it, What If We Abolish the Police? And, the film was really my deep dive into abolition and what that means and what it looks like, versus what my misconceptions about it were, but it was, really about abolition. And so it was an exploration. What if we abolish the police? What would we do then? And so that was how I was approaching the film, and that was the title. But I was like, I think putting abolish out there, especially with the backlash for defund the police, I thought that would be a problem. It was like, they're always like, oh, you need to have something alphabetically that's higher in searches. So, that starts with a W, so that would be at the bottom. And so I was racking my brains, and as a musician, as a writer, I've always started with a title and then written from there. And this is the first time that wasn't the case. And so I was like, I need a title. And I would just, brainstorm, and I would have pages of titles. And I sat down with Dr. Jody Armour for like 2 hours. He's in the film. And, he's very much into like the intersections of music and art and activism. And, we were talking about ideas. And Jose Gutierrez, who's in the film, who's a licensed therapist, but he's also a musician. So we were like, I was like, you understand titles. I need a title. I was talking to him and Nikki Black, who's in the film, who's a sociologist from Inglewood, and we're in an anti-racism community together. And I was talking to her, and she just tells it like it is. And she's like, look, you're trying to make this provocative. It doesn't need to be provocative. And I had narrowed it. I had said I could drop the public part and just call it Reimagining Safety. And she was like, that's what it is. Just go with that. It doesn't need to, the film speaks for itself. And so we were coming up on the San Pedro Film Festival, which was our first film festival last February. And I needed to give them a title. And it was literally like 3 weeks before. And they're like, what's the title? And I said, all right, Reimagining Safety. And it stuck. And at first, there were some folks like Gina Viola, who's in the film, who's ran for mayor of Los Angeles on an abolitionist platform. And she was like, I like the abolition title better, and there were people who did, but, a year later, people really connect with it. And they're like, yeah, it really is about safety and what makes us safe and alternatives, to what we're doing now. And so that's how it came about, and it stuck, and it's been like, there's an organization in Newark, New Jersey that wants to do in August, we're going to do a Reimagining Safety festival. Wow. That centers the film, but also has other, exhibits and music and art and information and things like that, all revolving around Reimagining Safety. So yeah, it's been, but yeah, I have like pages, like 5 pages of different titles, and
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. What was, you have a great roster of people you have conversations with. Were those the people you wanted? Were, like, when you reached out to each one of these people, did they say yes? Was there any extra conversation needed to get the people you got?
No. I mean, there were some other folks I wanted to interview also. And timing didn't work, or I never heard back, or whatever. But, the way it was really interesting, because Alex Vitale, who he wrote a book called End of Policing, and he has some academic papers out. He's a professor at Brooklyn College, and he runs the policing and justice department. I had been citing him all throughout my program, and so I found his email and talked to him, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. And then he connected me. He was like, oh, Jody Armour is in LA. He teaches at USC. You should talk to him. And I looked up Jody Armour, realized I've seen him on stuff before, reached out to him. We had a 3-hour conversation before we even, just talking about hip hop and music and art, and, just bonding before we even did that interview. And then he was like, oh, you should talk to George Gascon. He's the district attorney of LA County. And he gave me his personal email. And I was like, okay. Wow. And I reached out to him, and he said, yeah, here's my assistant's, my assistant's number, let's schedule it. And so that happened really easily. Nikki Black, I knew from Community, and she was in. Gina Viola, my girlfriend at the time, had heard her on NPR being interviewed when she was running for mayor. And she was like, oh, there's this white woman running for mayor on an abolitionist platform. And I was like, what? And so I checked her out and saw all the endorsements that she had and who was behind her. And I just emailed her, and she was like, okay. And then Senate Devermont is Mr. Checkpoint, and he's in LA and, films police regularly. And I reached out to him. He was down. And then Hadia Kennedy, who's a former LAPD officer, they worked together on his nonprofit, Always for the People. And so he connected me to her. And then I reached out to you because I was, when I was looking for people to interview, and you said, oh, you should talk to Elle Jones. And then when I looked her up and saw that she actually wrote, co-authored a report on defunding the police, detasking.
Still, yes.
And I was like, this is the gold mine right here, So that all came together, really. And then Hawk Newsom, who's co-founder of Black Lives Matter New York and Black Opportunities. I had been following him. I wanted to reach out. I was like, he's not going to respond to me. And then one day he followed me on Twitter, and he sent me a private DM, and he's like, I love all the work you're doing. I was like, what? How do you? So I messaged him. I was like, I've been wanting to reach out to you. I'm doing this project for school, and I would love to talk to you. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so it all just came together.
Were, in the conversations you had with all these individuals, were there common passions or concerns that they had?
Yeah. It's all they care about people. They love people. They're all about community and having a world that works for everyone, and centering equity, and centering, Black voices, and creating real systems of accountability and safety and things like that, but all centered in love. I didn't mention Jose Gutierrez, who I had mentioned before. I asked my department chair at school, who do you know anybody in mental health? And she connected me to somebody who connected me to him, and so all of them are really just, they care about, somebody was arguing with me about my film, and they're like, why are you even doing this? I was like, because I care about people. Mm-hmm. And that was the through line. And actually that was the big awareness regarding abolition for me, mm-hmm. is that it's really about love. And it's about, if we cared about each other, we would do things differently. And when we do care, we do things differently, and people have their needs met.
Excellent. Really, really good.
Yeah.
This is good. And catching this conversation, speak of her, Dr. Tachi of Indie Soup Media in for the room, and definitely people catch her when she's back on, well, outside of doing Indie Soup Media on Mediascope, the livest conversation about media, tech, and pop culture on 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesdays on Instagram, and then 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesdays on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, not Twitch, LinkedIn. I think I covered everything. I don't think it's Instagram, but I think I covered everything. You can correct me, Dr. Tachi, if I got anything wrong. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to play a little clip from the movie, and then we're going to have Matthew come back and just share some of the special moments that he's encountered sharing this movie with many people right across America. So we're going to give this a go in regards to getting the trailer up. So we're going to do this. Let's make it happen. Trailer, yes. Okay, let's give this a go. Come on, Dr. Vibe. Here we go.
America has never been a place where we had democracy and equality and freedom and liberty for all and justice for all. And all we have to do is get back to that.
Race in this country has never really been removed from the political dialogue. Because we won't reckon with our past, because we will let older people say, oh, that's so old, and let's not talk about that anymore. Slavery was so long ago. We haven't had it for 200 years. This is, not realizing that we never reckoned, we never repaired any of it at all.
Police are violence workers. We've been sold this false choice of policing or nothing, which has been used to terrorize people into accepting policing, when there's a whole long list of things that they would rather have that they know would help address the problems in their communities.
When we say abolish the police, we are saying we do not want policing as we know it to exist anymore.
What people don't realize when we're talking about abolition is that we're really talking about the fact that we want you to be a decent person, that it's going to require that you relate to people.
We created a report, and it's called Defunding the Police, Defining the Way Forward for HRM. Like, the myth is that we need all these people in jail all day, be running around the streets, and that's not true. So I really try to shift us from believing that defunding is radical to recognizing that what is actually radical is investing billions of dollars into policing. So, not agree that defunding the police is this radical lefty, communist, Marxist, whatever, that is actually practical, it's good social policy, it makes sense, and here's a roadmap to it.
This is not some kind of abstract utopian envisioning. This is a very practical programmatic intervention.
When you begin to think differently and you begin to look at people through the eyes of the humanity in all of us, and sort of that love for humankind, your thinking and your approach to the work starts to be very different.
There we go. So, Matthew, we need you to unmute.
Thank
there
you.
We go.
All right.
So let's talk about some of the special moments you've had. Is it 46 screenings? Is it
46? Yep.
40. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask.
And more coming.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to the first screening?
Yeah. Well, the very first one was a test screening at Jody Armour's house. And, it was a group of, friends and family. He's a professor, USC law professor. So there were law students. There was a group of abolitionists from LA who were there, who are, you know, from various groups who are, you know, very like, you know, they're on it, you know, they know their stuff. And so, you know, I screened it just to see what the reaction would be, and across the board everybody was like, people need to see this. It was an early stage of the film, you know, so I needed to you know, update like the graphics and things like that, and do color correction and audio mix. But across the board, people were like, yeah, people need to see this. And so then we had a screening at the San Pedro Film Festival, where it debuted as Reimagining Safety and not the, you know, what if we abolish the police? And that was incredible because it was a huge theater in San Pedro. There were about 100 and something people there. People were, you know, laughing. People were reacting. People were cheering, you know, certain parts of the film, you know, really. And I was like, wow, this is cool. And so that was awesome. And then I started, you know, reaching out to people. Tyree Nichols had just been murdered in Memphis. And so I had reached out to some folks in Memphis, and they were like, yeah, let's do a screening. And so screened in Memphis to 170 people, hosted by Decarcerate Memphis and Black Lives Matter Memphis. And that response was amazing. And then, you know, it just kind of kept going and going. And people would, you know, see me on, you know, this show and other shows, and, you know, reach out and be like, hey, how can we get a screening in our town? And so we ended up in San Jose, California, and Sacramento. And then there was this whole like East Coast, New York, New Jersey circuit that opened up. I've been in New Jersey like 5 times already, different cities in New Jersey with, you know, activists that have been in the work for 40, 50 years. Baba Zaid Muhammad, who's like a legend, was like, you know, a big champion of the film and has been on several of the panels that we've had. And yeah, so it's just, and then the Black Panther Party in Washington State. Like I said, I got a message one day from the organizer there who wanted to bring me to Seattle and Tacoma, and she was like, "Oh, you know, Bunchy Carter, the Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party, wants to talk to you." I'm like, okay. so we get on the phone, and he's like, I've watched your film 4 times, and I find something different every time, and it's really amazing, and we want to use this as part of our political education curriculum.
Wow. And
I was like, what? Wow. And then, you know, we did 2 screenings there, and it was awesome. And then San Antonio, Texas. We actually had, there's an organization called Act for Essay, San Antonio, and they funded Spanish captions. So we did a screening there with English and Spanish captions in San Antonio, Texas. So, and all that's available on the streaming services now too. So you can watch it with Spanish and English captioning and all of that.
Very nice. Dr. Tachi says, wow, and is applauding. She's a documentary maker herself too, so she can awesome. Relate also. I'll definitely have to introduce you to very, very much. It'd be great, great knowing each other, what you're doing, passionate. Pushback.
Mm-hmm.
Have you encountered it along the way? And if you're at liberty, who's it been from?
Yeah. So it's interesting. You know, people ask me, what do cops think? And so up until the Newark screening, which I'll get to in a second, my experience has been former cops have watched the film and they've said, yeah, it's like that. And I can't believe you got a cop to say what she said in the film, because she talks about the training and the mindset and internal affairs and all of that stuff. Up until the Newark screening, current cops try to nitpick it and push back and you know, look for ways to say, oh, come on, it's not that bad, or we do some good things, or they'll try and diminish what Hadia says about her training. But the irony is, there was a reality show in the mid 2000, like 2005, 2006, called The Academy. which followed the LA County Sheriff's Department Academy. It was 2 seasons where they showed the process. And so everything she was LAPD, but it's the same thing. Like everything she describes was on TV with the Sheriff's Department, you know. So current cops, you know, push back, and we had a NYPD captain at a New York screening who was on the panel, and you know, was kind of arguing about like the race, and was like, oh, it's not race, it's part of it, but it's really more what do you call it, like, you know, economic, it's class, it's more a class thing. Race is part of it, but it's mostly class, you know. And then but people in the audience weren't buying that either.
Oh, I'm sure there's quite the response when he was saying that.
Yeah. She actually, yeah. But then when we screened in Newark about a month ago, and you know, I was nervous. I knew there were cops in the room. It was at a police center. It was mostly community, like violence prevention groups. But there were 3 officers there who work with those community responders. And all 3 of them were like, this is an incredible film. More of us need to see it. It's hard to watch. And you know, one of them was like, you know, I feel sad watching this, but I'm also hopeful because hopefully this will change things. And I was like, what? So that was different. And there were, you know, some folks there that I'm friends with who were like, well, those weren't like beat cops. They work with the community group, so they're different, even though, you know, so they were like, don't get too excited. but it was, you know, that's been the response, and the pushback has been, you know, from current police.
How does this film not only spotlight, in not a good way, the criminal justice system in America today, but also spotlights America today?
I mean, well, it starts early on in the film with our district attorney saying he doesn't call it the criminal justice system because there's so many injustices. So he calls it the legal system. You know, Angela Davis called it the criminal punishment system in her book, Are Prisons Obsolete? So, you know, it's the film covers the history of policing, so slave patrols, mass incarceration, things like that. But it's directly tied to, you know, George Floyd and current policing and the militarization of policing. And Elle Jones talks about this in the film, about how, you know, in the States especially, the police have decommissioned weapons from the military, from the war in Iraq, and tanks and you know, semi-automatic rifles and things like that. So it really it shows the lineage, and you know, we're taught that police are here to protect and serve and to keep us safe. And as a white, you know, kid, it was always like, oh, if you're in trouble, you go to the police, you know, and my black friends were like, no, we don't do that. And so it took me time to like figure out why. But then, you know, if you look at how police are trained, you know, so we all have these biases, which Dr. Armour talks about in the film. But then on top of that, the training is not protect and serve, it's command and control. And they drill in, and this was in the academy, the reality show, they drill in command presence. And when you show up, you have to be in charge, and you can't take crap from anybody. And you gotta, you know, if somebody pushes back, you never lose a fight. Like I remember that clearly, you know, you don't lose, you never lose. Right. And so that's drilled in. And then you get on the street, and the way that you prove yourself is by making arrests and hassling people. And if there is a confrontation, you have to jump in and fight right away to show that you're not going to back down, to prove yourself to your partners. So the whole culture of policing, Alex Vitale talks about the warrior mentality. Whole culture of policing is about violence and force. And so, you know, that's very clearly laid out in the film, you know, which makes the case for we need alternatives. And there are alternatives. that are already in place, in a lot of places. So it's just a matter of investing in those more, making people aware that there's different ways that we can be doing things that produce real safety for everybody.
Excellent. I've only done it a few times in our conversation, but there's the contact information if you want to find more about the film: website, Instagram, Facebook, email, and also wherever you're watching this, I've put it in the comment section. So don't say, oh, wow, I don't see it on the screen. Take a look in your comment section. It's there. Matthew, when you first put out this movie, there was, from those who are passionate about this like you are, the light was brighter just from my lens in regards to reimagining safety, reimagining policing. Have you noticed a shift, for lack of a better term, more to the right? Because, you know, when I listen to American news, crime rates, this, that, other thing, and, you know, it seems to be more of a challenge on the streets in America. Are you noticing that? And how are people addressing the current situation in America when it comes to policing with your documentary? Because times have changed. When it first came out, there was a more optimism, I would say, than there is now.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's different. I think the people on the ground doing the work are grateful for the film, because they're like, great, we have a tool. You know, we're tired of talking about it and people not hearing us. And I've had experiences where white liberals in particular, who were afraid of defund the police, see the film and are like, oh, I get it now. And then, you know, they're empowered. With, you know, when the film first, when I was finishing it up before that first film festival, things had gotten a little quiet. There all of a sudden was the whole critical race theory pushback, you know, that was a, you know, right-wing weaponization. And I was literally reading Kimberly Crenshaw's work going like, oh my God, I love this. This is amazing. And then to hear all these lies about critical race theory. And so I was seeing how the media was being manipulated and messaging was being manipulated to shut down Black liberation movements. Right. And so that happened, the whole, you know, war against wokeism and all of that. Now they're trying to ban DEI and things like that. There was a nationwide increase in crime after COVID restrictions were lifted. And so, you know, the media rallied around, oh, crime's up and we need more cops and it's scary now. And they've actually, the crime rates have gone down recently. You know, so and we're in an election year, and so tough on crime has been the go-to since the 80s. You know, since at least since Reagan, maybe before that, but that's been a thing. So I think we're in a space where, you know, the pro-police folks are really gripping hard, but there's so much evidence because everybody's got a camera in their hand, and we're seeing so much evidence of police violence and how they interact, and that it doesn't produce safety. And then there are organizations that are doing, you know, community response work. So I think it's kind of a lot of different things. You know, the pro police folks are digging in, trying really hard, but there are people are open to new possibilities, and people are wanting something different, and they're seeing that the system, it works how it's designed, but it's not working, you know, for everybody. And so I really think with George Floyd, that opened up a space. You know, the initial like swarm of support has, you know, died off, not completely, but, you know, it's not, but that kind of happens. And people who have been in, you know, movement spaces for generations saw that coming. You know, and so the veterans in those spaces do say that there's still way more support now than there ever was, and people are mobilized. And, you know, honestly, the situation in the genocide in Palestine, threw a wrench into things, but I think people are waking up even more because it's the same. It's, whether it's police as police officers and the institution of policing, in the States or in Canada or wherever, and the military, and othering and oppressing, especially Black and Brown community, and the dehumanization, and the really finding ways to justify the violence. I think more and more people are waking up to, this stuff is not good, and we need to do something different. So I don't know, it's a long answer, but
that's okay.
It's kind
okay.
of
no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Cass Lou says policing is procedural, penal code, and deterrent approach rather than rehabilitative approach for the most part, she says.
Yeah.
And also says, bless Friday, great discussion. Are you seeing any different responses to your great work generation wise?
So that's a good question. I don't think so.
Okay.
The audiences have been pretty, there's been a good spread generation wise. My aunt, who lives in New Jersey, who's in her late 70s, has seen the film 3 times, and
wow,
she's
like support.
Yeah, she's one of the white liberal classification type, and her sister, and they've been out to screenings, and after she saw it the first time, she's like, I can't stop talking about this, and I'm talking to people about it. I'm thinking about it, So yeah, I haven't really noticed generationally. I think if anything, well, I don't know. There've been some of the more, I don't know, hardcore activists, younger hardcore activists. How do I, I'm trying to, they would have liked me to go harder on certain things in the film, but at the same time, they're like, this is great. And this is, we need this. And there's nothing like it. There really isn't anything like it that anybody is aware of. There are documentaries on police violence. There's nothing that really talks about that and the alternatives in the same, within the same film that covers, the history, the impact, the reasons why we do what we do, the influence of the media, propaganda and that sort of thing. Transitioning into communities of care and how that makes us safer, and how to actually do that, in 83 minutes. So that's feedback that I've gotten also, is that people are like, I've never seen anything like this before that really covers everything.
As we're sitting here digitally on March 15th, 2024, have you achieved so far what you thought about when that professor said you should do this? Have you achieved? Have you been satisfied that this dream has come into a good reality for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond what I thought. And March 15th, it's International Day Against Police Violence today, which is really, which that worked out well.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to fill a gap, because there wasn't a lot of academic material on abolition and alternatives to policing when I was going through my master's program. There hadn't been a film, that covered what I wanted to cover, collectively. I wanted people to see it. I wanted it to make a difference. And the fact that it's caught on like this, and, over 3,000 people have seen it. And with it being on streaming, I've had people say, we had a watch party last weekend with a group of friends. And, that's stuff that I hoped would happen. Because as a filmmaker, I know, Paranormal Activity, when that came out, people were doing watch parties.
Yep.
And when 13th came out, that was kind of what gave me the idea to do community impact screenings, because that was part of what they were doing. and then people would have watch parties, you know, for 13th, the Ava DuVernay's documentary. So I had hoped that things like that would happen, you know, but really the magnitude and the endorsements and you know, just the positive feedback from all kinds of various people, from academics to activists to mental health professionals to, you know, just, you know, parents, you know.
We got 3 more quick conversation pieces and we'll let you go. I know because you got more stuff to do. I think you're traveling again tomorrow probably. So first things first, 2-part question. When it comes to this subject, when it comes to policing in North America, what is your suggestion for the police system in North America?
For the system, well, I mean, ultimately, this system needs to go away, and we need new systems, plural, of care and accountability and taking care. You know, just, you know, when people have their needs met, crime goes down. That's been proven time and time again. So, you know, fortunately, this was another part of my education in abolition. L. Jones and Nikki Black, Hawk Newsom also, like all 3 of them were like, we're not ready to just get away with these systems all of a sudden. You know, there's a process, because we also have to, and Mariame Kaba talks about this, like we have to deal with the cop inside our head that has to police people and is reliant on punishment and thinks that, oh, that's the only way to handle things is to punish people. So like we have to do and this is talked about in the film, we got to do our own internal work. We have to be in community with people. You know, it was fascinating when Nikki was talking about how we need to know our neighbors. I was always very much into like, who are my neighbors and all of that, even as a kid. And on the block where I grew up, over the years, all of the walls and the shrubs and the fences have gone up, except for my dad's house and, you know, a couple other houses. But for the most part, like everybody's walled off from each other. So it's a process. And, you know, the system of policing is really, they're trained to do very specific things rooted in violence and control and that sort of thing. So, you know, Mariame Kaba, when she talks about getting to abolition, it's about a process of making police obsolete, where we put other systems in place. And Nikki talks about this in the film. If something happens, I'm going to call my neighbor. My kids will call, you know, my mom or, you know, my partner or whomever, and not call the police. You know, we just had a young man, 15 years old, Ryan Gaynor, who was having a mental health crisis, who was shot and killed in San Bernardino by the sheriff's department. So things like that, you know, we have to take them out of the stuff that they're not trained for, and replace them with people who are trained to deal with people at a human level. And it's a process. But to get to your question, the system does not, it serves like the elites, right? But it doesn't serve the people.
What is your suggestion for government?
Yeah, that's been a disappointment also, because we've had in LA, especially, we had elected some folks to city council positions who were very like, oh, we need to, you know, change public safety and defund the police and fund other programs, who most of them, not all of them, but most of them have voted for pay increases for the police and expanding the police. So for government, I think we need to really vet candidates, and there has to be, you know, a process that we know if somebody gets in, like we can trust them and we can hold them accountable, and they'll show up the way that they say they're going to. But it's hard. It's also, this is the first time for me that, because I've known in the States, the two-party system. I don't believe that necessarily that it's two sides of the same coin. But I do think that the majority of the elected officials on the left still feed, the interests of the right. And so we're not getting anywhere where we could be. So, with elections coming up, I'm much more looking at third party candidates and that sort of thing, the socialist parties and, just because we have to shift the balance of power, and there's too much corporate interest. There's too much interest in, I want to stay elected and, keep my seat. And so I'm going to sell off my morals and values and integrity. And,
okay.
Yeah.
What is your suggestion for the public?
Get in community, be in community with people, join communities. We all have work to do. Like I don't think anybody is free of mental health challenges, trauma, that sort of thing. It's all at different levels, of course, and we're all impacted. As a white male, I'm impacted the least. I'm also Jewish, so there's a whole, there are intersections there. I'm a Jewish person who's, for a free Palestine. So, there's challenges there. But really it's really about community, knowing your neighbors, being in community with people, doing the work, learning. I mean, going back to my conflict resolution work, knowing how to listen and communicate and work together. And, we in the US, it's always been like rugged individualism, and that just keeps us separate and creates more division and doesn't really work like collectively if we have to live together, which we do. So yeah, it's really about connecting with one another.
All right. I need you to stick around just for a few quick more moments. Cass
Yeah.
has this comment saying, in order to change the system, have to change some of the laws and meet the needs of the communities being served. And she has a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think peace officers would be a new approach to policing?
Oh, I think the whole officer title coming from overseer and going back to slavery, what I see that works, and this is working in Newark, like Newark, New Jersey, they took 5% of their police budget, put it into community responders, violence prevention teams, and crime significantly, I think it was like 30 or 40%, like reduced, like 30 something percent. So like Cass was saying, I think earlier, something about communities. Yeah, it's having people who are like people. We're all hurting. People need to feel heard and understood and valued. And when people show up when you're in need and can sit and listen and talk and get where you're coming from and provide support, that helps immensely. I've seen that in my work, but yeah, community organizing, grassroots organizations, as Cass was saying, all of that. I don't think the system of punishment. Well, I know the system of punishment doesn't work. Maybe for a very, very, very small percentage, maybe, but across the board, not really.
All right. Well, before we let you go, where can people see it and what's up next?
Yeah, well, so the website is reimaginingsafetymovie.com. We're streaming on Amazon and Tubi, YouTube, and Google Play, so you can see it there. If you see it, please leave ratings and reviews, because that helps with the algorithm, and that helps more people see it. And then we're I'm going to be in Washington State for 4 screenings in April. I'm going to be in Newark, trying to get to Canada. Would love to be up
We're working
there.
on it. We're doing our best.
Yeah.
Is there a part 2 in the thought process? Not saying the make.
Oh, for sure. I want to do actually a whole series, a docu-series, approaching different social challenges, but through the lens of abolition, through the lens of care, how we could approach things differently. And another thing is, because there are community responder organizations and violence prevention organizations that are doing the work, it would be great to focus on them and really put out, because we get into it in the film, we touch on it, but I've learned a lot in the last year. I've connected with a lot of people in the last year who are doing this kind of work. So it'd be great to highlight, those folks and really, because people need to see, we're so inundated with movies and TV and the news only showing us like these are bad guys and we have to deal with bad guys this way and like all of that. And so we really need more of a film and TV and media presence that shows different things that actually work.
All right.
Yeah.
Caslu says, thank you. She will check it out.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's a beautiful thing. Matthew, as always, want to say thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule. You're always taking time to reach out. We appreciate it. Not taken for granted. Continued success in the journey. And I'm doing my best to get it here up in Canada. I ain't going to be happy till that happens. And to you and your family and all the people that you serve, and especially to yourself. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. All right. There's the contact information for Reimagining Safety. And another great, always have good times with Matthew. We've gone back a bit, and I've seen him grow, and only get better and better. So I want to say thank you for everyone who caught this live on the replay. It's appreciated and not taken for granted. So a few little things of homework or housekeeping, I guess, before we leave. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe channel on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook to advertise your business, product, or service on the platform. Please feel free to email me, dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com. And finally, you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and on the Dr. Vibe Show website, which is the drvibeshow.com. And finally, too, if you want to get in touch with me, here are all the places. Gave you the website. There's a YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, the Dr. Vibe Show, Instagram at the drvibeshow.com, X at drvibeshow, and email dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com. Got 2 more quick comments here. We're going to do this. Dr. Tachi says this was great. And Susan Gonzalez says, I like that the use of highlight the whole belief here that the U.S. on independence rather than corporation to unite our communities. I'll be watching this movie this weekend. Well, that's what we want. More people watching it. Fantastic. So, as always, how we close out. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good.